Hey guys, once again welcome back to the layout. My name is Josh. Today we're going to take a look at how to build an AC44C6M. However, before we start, I'd just like to apologize to Shane from ScaleTrains.com. I did cut one of your brand new Dash 9s in half, but it had to be done, and I think we came out with a great model. So let's go and get started. We'll take a look at a couple run-bys of the locomotive, and then I'll kind of show you how I built it. And just a little bit of background, I used a ScaleTrains NS Dash 9 as the base, and then I used the ScaleTrains ET44AC, or a Tier 4 Gevo cab, and a couple other components. I'll show you how I kind of merged the two together to create one of the rebuilt top hat Dash 9 locomotives that NS has. So let's go and get started. Alright guys, so over here, let's go and get started. One thing I want to mention real quick before you go ahead and do any custom work, and this is just a good general tip for custom building in general, is test the locomotive, especially if it's brand new. It's just way easier to try to talk to a manufacturer if something's wrong, if the locomotive is not cut up in half or torn to pieces. And not that I expected anything to be wrong with this. I know ScaleTrains has great quality control, but just to be safe, way easier to just throw it on the track, make sure it goes backwards, forwards, does all the functions before you start taking it apart and tearing it up. So that being said, we'll go and get started. We're going to start by removing the handrails and some of the detail parts here, basically just stripping it down to the detail parts so that none of those are damaged while we split the shell in half, and then we'll go back afterwards and kind of splice it together and put the detail parts back on. It's really just to protect them from coming apart. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and remove the shell itself from the frame. We're just going to save the frame for later and kind of figure out how to splice this thing together. So to do that, we're just going to go ahead and remove the coupler boxes. I'm using a small Phillips head screwdriver. I'm going to do that for the front and the back. And as always, I always put my parts into the box just so that I save them so that nothing gets lost. So So the nice thing, as I kind of look through this, it seems like the Dash 9 is designed very similar to the Tier 4. That's the cab I'm going to be using here. And I think you just unscrew these two screws and the cab should come off. Again, I haven't done a locomotive like this, so even though I'm showing you guys what I'm doing, I am learning as I go. So we'll kind of see how this goes, try to remove these screws. Alright, so before I get to the cab, I'm just going to go and start by prying apart the sill from the actual long hood shell itself. And it's glued every couple inches, so what I'm doing is taking an X-Acto knife, very carefully inserting it in between the sill and the main part of the shell here, and just twisting. And what that does is just applies a very gentle pressure without damaging any of the details or the shell itself, and kind of prying apart that glue. That's kind of what I found works best. So I'll show you again. You can see it's glued here, it doesn't want to come out. I'm going to go and stick the blade in, sharp side first, put it in and twist to break that seal. Okay, so first off, I'm going to get a brand new X-Acto blade. Anytime I'm working with cutting anything that you're going to see or the shell, I always get brand new, very sharp X-Acto blade. Just makes for cleaner cuts. Next, I always cut short and then file longer. So I cut about 1 millimeter short. And like I said, that's just kind of a safety measure. It's always better to undercut than overcut because it's way harder to add material than it is to remove. Alright, so there we go, we got our fit, and we can take it off the frame to see if it sits a little bit better. And of course I got to do the other side, so it's not going to sit in perfectly, but you can see the only thing I'm going to need to fix is just a tiny little gap right there. Everything else is lining up pretty well. Alright, so I figured out one of the reasons it's not sitting straight is because there's these little tabs on the underside of the shell, and they're just a little different between the Dash 9 and the Gevo, so I'm going to cut them off. I think it's going to be fine without them because the screws are going to hold everything together. So those screws might be a lifesaver for me. And FYI, there's a couple tabs right here I cut off as well. Look at that. Perfect. Perfect fit. I'm excited, and we'll keep chugging along. It's looking like things are starting to shape up a little bit. Looks like that might not be sitting down all the way. We'll figure it out. Okay, so we'll update. Here's the back half. Here's the front half. I went ahead and filed everything down. Let's see, I'll flip it over here, and I'm just getting ready to glue it back together. I'll show you guys this in just a second after I glue it, but I rebuilt the little panels back here to make them cracked. And it's looking like things are going to line up. It doesn't look like it's lined up because the sill stripe is mismatched as far as where it's located, but the pieces actually fit together well, so I just need to fix the paint on that. But other than that, it's coming along well. I'm going to glue it. What I'm going to do is glue it from the inside first. I'll put a little bit of bracing up there to support it, and then we'll kind of see what's next. Alright y'all, so here's the plan with this thing. Pretty much got it finished up. What I did, kind kind of like I was talking about before, how I spliced it, really sanded down the two sides, which took probably an hour of just sanding. But that was really the only way to get that perfect seal and set there. And like I mentioned, it's a little different color paint there, only because we're in the bright light, but once I get a gloss coat on, you shouldn't be able to tell. And one fun thing, that little panel above the three doors, I was trying to figure out the best way to make it, and it's actually a floor panel, which came off of the Tier 4, and I just filed down the tread and then stuck it on there, and it worked perfectly. It's almost the right size. So, anyways, I fixed that, and then here's the cab. A couple other neat things I did is I installed some ground lights underneath the cab there, and then I'll put a cab light in as well, and you can see it's not sitting all the way down now, but once that's done, it will. And we're pretty much ready for a gloss coat, and then I just use some masking tape to cover areas where I don't want the gloss coat to cover. So for instance, the radiator grills back here on the top of the exhaust stack, and then just some anti-tread, I guess not anti-tread, some tread paint up here on the cab. So and then also the lights. So that's about it. So we're gonna gloss coat it, and then we'll really just do the reverse that we started with and put all the parts back on, put the cab interior in, and we'll go. Alright, so that just about wraps up the video. One thing I want to mention real quick, you can see that I picked locomotive number 4184, and the reason I did that is because it actually hasn't been built yet in real life, and I think it'd be really cool to have it shiny, which I put a gloss coat on it, and then when the real one comes out, which I think it should be in a month or two, it'll look just like the real one that's out on the rails. So I went on a little bit of a limb because I'm not totally sure if they're going to paint it like I did. I'm kind of tempted to send them a picture of my model and be like, can you please model your real locomotive after my model? So I might do that just for fun and see what happens, but probably nothing. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or questions, let me know in the comment section below. I'd be happy to help you out, and I'll see you next time. Bye.